You're not here to think, sweetheart. You're here to take notes. Stephen said it casually, like it was an established rule everyone already agreed on. The conference room went still. Not frozen, just tight. The kind of stillness that creeps in when something inappropriate has been said in a professional space and no one wants to be the one to acknowledge it. The client across the table, a woman named Laura with sharp posture and sharper eyes, paused mid-sentence. Stephen didn't notice, or didn't care. I looked down at my notebook. 7 people sat around the table, Stephen at the head. 2 senior managers flanking him, 3 client representatives, and me, Michelle, senior analyst, 8 years with the firm, responsible for building the entire operational model we were presenting. I picked up my pen. Stephen launched back into his explanation, confidently outlining delivery timelines I knew were unrealistic. I'd flagged the risk twice during prep, once in writing. He'd waved it off every time. So I stopped writing meeting notes. I turned the page. At the top of the fresh sheet, I wrote, "Dear Stephen, my hand didn't shake." That surprised me. While Stephen talked about flexible compliance and fast-tracked approvals, I began drafting my resignation letter. Not dramatically, not angrily, just clearly. Sentence by sentence, effective immediately, I am resigning from my position. Laura glanced at me. Just a quick look, then another. She noticed the shift. Anyone paying attention would. Stephen continued, completely unaware. I kept writing. I listed my role, my tenure, my responsibilities. I stated my notice period. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I didn't apologize. The letter wasn't for closure. It was for control. Stephen wrapped up the meeting 5 minutes later than scheduled, as usual. "Michelle will circulate the notes," he said, snapping his laptop shut. "We'll follow up by end of day." I capped my pen. Chairs moved, polite thank yous filled the room. The clients began gathering their things, but Stephen didn't stand. He leaned back, clearly pleased with himself. "Any final questions?" he asked. Laura hesitated. "Just one," she said carefully. "Can we get written confirmation on the 6-month timeline?" Stephen opened his mouth. I stood. "I can address that," I said calmly. Stephen turned toward me, irritation flashing across his face. "Michelle?" I stepped forward and placed a document on the table in front of him. "This is for you," I said. He glanced down. The header was visible immediately. Resignation letter. His smile vanished. "What is this?" he asked sharply. "My notice," I replied. "Effective today." The room went silent. Stephen looked up at me, then back down at the paper, then up again. "You're joking, right?" "No," I said. "I'm documenting." One of the senior managers shifted uncomfortably. Laura's eyes stayed on me. Stephen lowered his voice. "Sit down. We'll talk about this later." "There's nothing to discuss," I said evenly. "You were clear about my role. I listened." His face flushed. "You don't resign in the middle of a client meeting." I didn't interrupt, I replied. I waited until the end. I turned toward Laura. I reached into my bag and handed her my business card. Not the firm-issued one. Mine. "Available from now on," I said. "If you'd like clarification on today's discussion, or an accurate delivery assessment, you're welcome to call." Stephen stood up abruptly. "Michelle, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Laura accepted the card slowly. "Thank you," she said. Her tone was neutral, but her eyes weren't. "I think this meeting is over," she added, standing. Stephen laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "This is wildly inappropriate." "I agree," Laura said, looking directly at him. "But not for the reason you think." She gathered her team and left without another word. The door closed. Stephen rounded on me. "You just torpedoed this account," he snapped. "You embarrassed me." "No," I said calmly. I stopped covering for you. You don't get to freelance off my clients, he said. I didn't, I replied. I made myself available. There's a difference. He jabbed a finger at the resignation letter. You think this is real? Yes, I said. You'll regret this, he said. You need this job. I met his eyes. I needed respect, I replied. This was easier. I picked up my bag. Oh, I added, pausing at the door. The notes you asked for? They're in the folder. Everything you said, word for word. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. I walked out of the room, past my desk, straight to the elevator. Behind me, Stephen was still standing at the table, holding my resignation in one hand, staring at the empty chair where I'd been sitting. For the first time, he understood something important. I hadn't been taking notes for him. I'd been writing my way out. By the time I reached the lobby, my hands were steady. That was how I knew I'd done the right thing. Stephen didn't follow me. He never chased. He escalated behind closed doors, through emails, through other people. I'd seen it happen often enough to know the pattern. Right now, he was recalculating, deciding whether my resignation was a bluff, a tantrum, or a liability. It was none of those. At 6:04 p.m., while I sat in my car in the underground garage, my phone buzzed. Stephen, come back upstairs. We need to talk. I didn't reply. I drove home. That night, I slept better than I had in months. No half-dreams about missed deadlines. No mental rehearsals of conversations I wished I'd handled differently. I'd already said what needed to be said, in the clearest language Stephen understood. The next morning, I arrived early, not to work, to document. I logged into my laptop remotely and forwarded every relevant file to my personal archive. Project scopes, signed proposals, internal approvals, timeline assumptions Stephen had overridden. Nothing confidential outside my rights, nothing stolen, just copies of my own work. At 9:17 a.m., HR called. Elaine. Michelle? She said carefully. Can you come in today? Yes, I replied. I'll be there at 10. When I walked into the office, the atmosphere had shifted. People avoided eye contact. A few offered sympathetic smiles. News traveled fast in our firm, but truth traveled slowly. All anyone knew was that I'd resigned in a client meeting. That alone was enough to make me radioactive. Elaine met me in a small conference room. Stephen was already there. He didn't look angry. He looked annoyed. Let's clarify a few things, Elaine began. Michelle, your resignation was formal and written, Stephen interrupted, but highly unprofessional in delivery. Elaine held up a hand. Stephen, let her speak. I appreciated that more than she knew. My resignation was intentional, I said. The timing reflected the circumstances. Elaine nodded. Your notice period is 2 weeks? Yes. Stephen leaned forward. I expect full transition support. I expect clear boundaries, I replied. His eyes narrowed. This isn't a negotiation. No, I said. It's a handover. Elaine cleared her throat. Michelle, will you continue supporting the client during the notice period? I paused. Only in writing, I said, and only on matters already documented. Stephen scoffed. You can't pick and choose. I can, I replied, or I can leave today. Silence. Elaine glanced between us. Stephen, given the circumstances, I think that's reasonable. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. After the meeting, Stephen sent a company-wide email. It was polite, vague, carefully worded. Michelle has decided to pursue other opportunities. We thank her for her contributions and wish her the best. No mention of the meeting. No mention of the client. But the client noticed. At 2:43 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Michelle, this is Laura. I stepped away from my desk. Yes, I said. I hope this is okay. She continued. I wanted to clarify something from yesterday. Of course. She hesitated. The 6-month timeline. Can you confirm whether that's realistic? I chose my words carefully. Based on the scope discussed, no. 9 to 10 months would be accurate, assuming approvals proceed without delay. There was a pause. That's what I thought, she said. Stephen seemed confident. He often is, I replied. Another pause, longer this time. Your card, she said. You mentioned availability. Yes. Would you be open to a call later this week? She asked. Off the record. I would, I said. After hours. Good, she replied. I appreciate your honesty. When the call ended, I sat still for a moment. I hadn't promised anything. I hadn't solicited. I hadn't crossed a line. I'd simply answered a question. Stephen didn't know about the call yet, but he felt it coming. The rest of the week passed in small, petty ways. My access was restricted. Meetings were reassigned. Stephen spoke to me only through others. Classic containment behavior. On Friday afternoon, Elaine stopped by my desk. Just so you know, she said quietly, the client requested a revised proposal. I'm not surprised, I replied. They asked specifically for delivery assumptions to be validated independently. I looked up at her. Independently of whom? She didn't answer. At 6:12 p.m., as I packed up my bag, Stephen appeared. You think you're clever, he said flatly, but you're replaceable. I met his gaze. Then replacing me should be easy. He smirked. Don't expect references. I don't, I said. That night, Laura emailed me from her personal address. Can we talk Monday? I replied with one line. Yes, I'm available. Stephen thought my resignation was an exit. What he didn't realize was that it was also a reveal. And once clients start seeing clearly, they don't forget who showed them the truth. Monday morning, I didn't go into the office. Technically, I was still employed. Notice period, access intact, obligations pending. But after 8 years, I knew the difference between being needed and being tolerated. Stephen had made it clear I was the latter. At 8:58 a.m., I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop open. No makeup, no blazer, just quiet. At exactly 9, my phone rang. Laura. Good morning, Michelle, she said. Her tone was brisk but controlled, the voice of someone who already knew what she wanted. Do you have a few minutes? I do, I replied. I'll be direct, she said. After Friday's meeting, my team reviewed your notes, not the ones Stephen circulated, the detailed version. I didn't react. Okay. They raised concerns, she continued, specifically around timelines, compliance checkpoints, and resource assumptions. That's fair, I said. Those were unresolved. They also noticed something else, she added. You. I leaned back slightly. You asked the questions we were thinking, she said, and you stopped asking when you were shut down. I noticed that too, I replied. She exhaled. Stephen followed up with a revised proposal Sunday night. It didn't address our concerns. I'm not surprised. Neither are we, she said, which brings me to why I'm calling. I waited. We need an independent review, Laura said. Someone who understands the operational reality, not just the sales narrative. I chose my words carefully. Are you asking me in a personal capacity? Yes, she said without hesitation. Short-term, discreet, paid. I closed my eyes for a moment, not in relief, but in recognition. Michelle? She prompted. I'm open to a conversation, I said, but I need to be clear about boundaries. Of course. I'm currently in a notice period, I said. I won't breach contractual obligations, and I won't undermine anyone. I don't want undermining, Laura said. I want accuracy. That was the difference. We scheduled a call for Wednesday evening, off the record. No firm email, no calendars. When I hung up, my inbox pinged. Stephen. Subject availability. Body, we need you on site today. Client revisions. I stared at the message. Then I replied. I'm available to document existing scope. Please confirm in writing. No response. At 11:32 a.m., Elaine from HR called. Michelle, she said quietly. Stephen has expressed concern about conflicts of interest. Has he? I replied. He's asking whether you've had direct contact with the client. I paused. Is he asking or accusing? Elaine sighed. Both. I answered a call, I said. I didn't solicit it. I didn't provide deliverables, and I documented the interaction. Elaine was quiet for a moment. That's prudent. I've been prudent for 8 years, I said. She didn't disagree. By Tuesday, the office tension was thick enough to taste. People whispered. Meetings happened without me. Stephen began copying legal on emails he'd previously handled casually. That told me everything. He wasn't angry anymore. He was scared. On Wednesday evening, Laura called again, this time with her technical lead present. We spoke for 90 minutes. I walked them through realistic timelines, regulatory bottlenecks, staffing constraints. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't dramatize. I told the truth. When the call ended, Laura said something that stuck with me. This is the first time we've felt informed instead of sold to. Thursday morning, Stephen stormed into my workspace. He didn't raise his voice. That would have been unprofessional. He lowered it. You've been talking to them, he said. I've answered questions, I replied. You're sabotaging me, he hissed. No, I said calmly. I resigned. You don't get to walk out and take my clients with you. I didn't take anyone, I said. They called me. He leaned closer. If this deal falls through, I'll make sure everyone knows why. I met his gaze. If it falls through, they'll know exactly why. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away. That afternoon, an all-hands meeting was scheduled. Stephen stood at the front, smiling too tightly. We're restructuring the account, he announced, to ensure continuity. I wasn't mentioned. Neither was my work. But Laura noticed. At 6:47 p.m., she emailed me again. We're pausing negotiations with your firm. I read the line twice. Then the next one. We'd like to engage you independently, effective immediately, pending legal review. I sat very still. Stephen didn't know yet. But he would. Because Friday morning, the client would formally notify the firm. And Stephen's confidence, the kind built on silencing others, was about to meet something far more dangerous than confrontation. Clarity. I closed my laptop and looked around my apartment. For the first time, it didn't feel like a temporary stop between workdays. It felt like a beginning. Stephen thought telling me to take notes had put me in my place. What it actually did was force him into mine. And the difference was, I knew exactly what I was writing. Friday morning started with a company-wide email. It was marked high importance, and Stephen had clearly written it himself. The tone gave him away. Overly confident, carefully vague, padded with language meant to sound strategic while saying very little. Following recent internal alignment, the client has decided to pause discussions while we reassess delivery strategy. Pause. Reassess. Soft words for a hard reality. Within minutes, the mood on the floor shifted. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. People checked their inboxes twice, then a third time. When you work long enough in one place, you learn to recognize institutional panic. Not the loud kind, but the quiet, contained version where everyone suddenly becomes very busy. The client's legal notice arrived shortly after. Clear, neutral, devastating. They were withdrawing from negotiations due to material discrepancies between represented and validated delivery assumptions. No names, no accusations, just facts. Stephen's office door closed. Legal got involved. HR stopped smiling. No one said anything to me directly, but I didn't need them to. I had seen this before, just never from this side of the fallout. Stephen called me into his office before lunch. He didn't offer me a seat. "This ends now," he said flatly. "Whatever game you think you're playing." "I'm not playing," I replied. "You think the client just happened to come to you?" He snapped. "You think legal won't connect the dots?" "They didn't come to me," I said. "They asked questions. I answered them." "You were still employed," he said. "Yes," I replied, and I followed policy. He laughed without humor. "You've always hidden behind policy." "No," I said evenly. "I hid behind you." That stopped him. "You're done here," he said. "I resigned," I reminded him. "With notice." "You think that protects you?" "It protects the firm," I said, "from doing something worse." He said nothing after that. Later that day, legal requested documentation. Not from Stephen, from me. They asked for meeting summaries, written risk flags, approved scopes, and timeline assumptions. Everything tied to the client engagement. I sent it without commentary. I didn't need to explain. The documents spoke clearly enough on their own. By mid-afternoon, small changes started happening. Stephen was no longer the sole decision-maker on the account. A senior partner appeared in his meetings. Legal was copied on communications that had previously been informal. The confidence he wore so comfortably earlier in the week had drained away. Containment had begun. Laura called me shortly after. "We've finalized our position," she said. "We're terminating discussions with your firm." "I understand," I replied. "We're also moving forward with you," she continued. "Independently. Legal approved it." I closed my eyes briefly, not from relief, but from confirmation. "We'll need a contract," I said. "It's drafted," she replied. "We'd like you to start immediately." Stephen no longer had authority to object. That was the moment everything shifted. Not emotionally, but structurally. Later that afternoon, Elaine from HR stopped by my desk. "Michelle," she said quietly, "can we talk?" We stepped into an empty conference room. "I won't pretend this is simple," she said. "The firm is reassessing leadership decisions related to the account." "I see," I replied. "Stephen has been asked to step back pending review." I nodded once. "There's also concern," she added, "about how you were addressed during that meeting." I stayed silent. Elaine sighed. "That language was inappropriate, and it's documented." "Yes," I said. She looked at me carefully. "You were right to leave." By the end of the day, Stephen was packing up. Not escorted, not fired. Just finished. He didn't look at me as he passed my desk. I didn't look at him either. This wasn't about embarrassment. It was about consequence. I sent my final email before leaving. Subject: Notice Period Conclusion. Given recent developments in the firm's request to limit involvement, today will be my final day. All documentation has been completed and transferred. Professional, clean, final. Laura sent over the contract that evening. I signed it. Over the weekend, I set up my new workspace. Secure access, clean calendar, clear scope. No politics, no translation layers. Just the work. On Sunday night, a message came through. From Stephen. "You think you won." I stared at it for a moment. Then I archived it, because winning doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to argue. It simply moves forward. And leaves certain people behind, staring at the silence where someone else used to take notes for them. 3 months later, I walked past my old office without slowing down. The building hadn't changed. Same glass lobby, same security desk, same elevator chime that used to mark the start of my workday. What had changed was my relationship to it. I no longer belonged there. And that was the point. My new role with Laura's company wasn't glamorous. No corner office, no inflated title. I worked on a contract basis, reporting directly to the executive team. My job was simple. Validate reality before decisions were made. No selling, no spin, just facts. The first project was the same one Stephen had nearly burned to the ground. Only now, timelines were realistic. Risks were acknowledged. Resources were properly allocated. The work moved slower, but it moved forward. Clients noticed. Word spread quietly. Within weeks, I had 2 additional consulting requests, both from companies that had previously worked with my former firm. No poaching, no outreach, just referrals. The kind that come when people remember who told them the truth when it mattered. One afternoon, Laura invited me to join an internal review meeting. As I walked into the room, I noticed something familiar on the table. A printed meeting agenda. Detailed, structured, clear. Laura caught my eye and smiled. "We've started doing things differently," she said. "You set the standard." I didn't correct her. Standards don't need defending. Later that week, Elaine from HR reached out. She asked if I was open to coffee. I agreed. We met at a small cafe near the office. She looked tired, but lighter. "I wanted you to hear this from me," she said after we ordered. Stephen resigned. I nodded once. "No investigation," she continued. "No dramatic ending. He was reassigned temporarily, then decided to leave." I stirred my coffee. "I hope he finds something that suits him." Elaine studied me. "You're being generous." "I'm being finished," I replied. She smiled faintly. "The firm changed some policies after you left." "Did they?" I said. "Meeting documentation standards, escalation procedures, language expectations." I met her eyes. "Good." She hesitated. "They also asked about you." "About what?" "Whether you'd ever consider returning." I didn't laugh. I didn't scoff. "No," I said simply. Elaine nodded like she already knew. As we stood to leave, she paused. "You know, that meeting, the one where he told you to take notes, it's used in training now." I raised an eyebrow. "Anonymized," she added quickly, "as an example of what not to do." I smiled. That evening, I sat at my desk at home reviewing a project plan. The window was open. The city hummed quietly below. No emails marked urgent. No messages demanding last-minute changes. Just work. My phone buzzed. Unknown number? I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. "Michelle speaking." There was a pause. Then a familiar voice. "This is Stephen." I closed my eyes briefly. "What do you want?" I asked. Not harshly, just directly. "I heard you're consulting now," he said. His tone was different. Lower. Careful. "Yes," I replied. "I have a project," he continued. "New firm, early stage. We could use someone with your background." I said nothing. "I won't pretend I handled things well," he added. "But I've learned." I believed he believed that. But belief wasn't the same as trust. "I'm not available," I said. There was another pause. Longer this time. "I figured," he said quietly. "I just thought I should ask." "You did," I replied. "And now you have your answer." Before hanging up, he said one last thing. "You really did just write your way out." "Yes," I said, "and into something better." The line went dead. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt done. A week later, Laura stopped by my desk during a site visit. "We're expanding the team," she said. "Would you consider a longer-term role?" I looked at the proposal she slid across the table. Fair compensation, clear authority, defined boundaries, respect, written into the contract. "Yes," I said. That night, I updated my resume. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to record the transition. Not the title. The shift. From note-taker to decision-maker. From background to foundation. Stephen had told me I wasn't there to think, so I did something far more dangerous. I thought carefully. I wrote precisely. And I chose when to stop taking notes for someone else's version of the story. The quiet line between documenting and deciding had always been there. I just finally stepped over it.